Now, the most comprehensive review of police pay and conditions in over 30 years is being led by the former rail regulator and top lawyer Tom Windsor. And today, the Police Arbitration Tribunal looks at the first part of his report. The government says it wants to improve services to the public and get value for money. But Julie Nesbit, who's the Constable's National Police Women's representative, says the planned changes might well make life much harder for female police officers and could well reduce the number of women in the force. Well, she's with me in the studio. Julie, good morning to you.
Good morning.
And joining us from a studio in Powys this morning is Jan Berry, who is the former chair of the Police Federation. Jan, good morning to you.
Good morning, Jane.
Julie, I want to start with you, and it's just about a quarter of the police force are women. How do you think Tom Windsor's recommendations might well impact upon them?
They'll impact in a number of ways, actually. Firstly, he's going away from the model of paying police officers that we have always known. Police officers currently work for either 30 or 35 years, and during that time they will work a number of shifts. Sometimes it will be 3 shifts, working weekends, sometimes it will be Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, depending on where they needed, the specialists and the skills that they have. One of the recommendations is that we start to pay what is called an unsocial hours payment, so officers who are working from 8 o'clock in the evening until 6 o'clock in the morning will receive an additional payment. Clearly, if you ask any worker would they like to receive more money, we will all say yes, we would. So if officers are asked would they like this payment, they would say yes, we would like to take it. But you have to take a step back from that and look at the impact that that will have on people who, at that moment in time, at that moment in their career, aren't able to actually work shifts and they can't access
Well,
the
OK,
payments.
you very carefully said people. Do you really mean women?
Women predominantly, yes. Obviously, there may be some of our male colleagues as well, but that will be predominantly women for a whole host of reasons, most noticeably for taking care of children.
Do you agree, though, with the philosophy that police pay has to change, that the way the system has been allowed to function over the last 30 years is old-fashioned and unwieldy and actually quite expensive and does need to change?
I think there are some things in policing that need to change. I think one of the problems that we've been battling with over a number of years is the bureaucracy within the police service, which costs the police service an awful lot of money. The one thing that you can say about police pay is it is relatively simple, and therefore that is not expensive in terms of running it.
What do you mean relatively simple?
It's relatively simple because you are paid currently for the length of service that you have.
So you just get you get an annual rise.
So you get an annual. Well, we're part of the public sector 2-year pay freeze at the moment, but normally, yes, we would get an annual rise.
So your core worry is that women will not be able to claim the overtime because they are not going to be around to offer themselves up for flexible working and overtime.
They would. This is not about, well, there's overtime is one issue, the unsocial hours payment is another issue. So women who have childcare responsibilities, who won't be able to work nights while they have young children to care for, won't be able to access that payment, yes.
Jan, what do you think about all this?
Well, I think women have worked really hard over the years in the police service to be recognised in the first place. You know, when I first joined back in the 70s, brawn was very much valued more than brain was. Women weren't allowed to go on patrol. We were pigeonholed into jobs where we mainly dealt with women and children, even though a lot of us didn't have children at the time, and the men were probably better able to deal with it. And you know, I can remember women going on promotion boards with notices on their application form saying, no women this year, and where selection processes much preferred men to women. So in fitness tests, they were written for men to pass, not for women to pass.
So do you think this review is a step back in terms of employment prospects for women in the police force?
Well, there is a danger in seeing that the jobs that women have fought hard to get, that they will not be able to compete for in the same way as they have been in the last few years, by putting this is, you know, there's a great subtlety sometimes in how you discriminate against women in employment. So, you know, not having an obvious discrimination where you don't employ women, but you put the rules and you put the pay in places where women are less able to access it, then that could put the years back, and it can also discourage women officers from joining the service.
So how will the quality of the service the police provide be affected by fewer women, Jan? What do you think?
Well, our society is 49%, 51% male and female. And in policing terms, that's what we should be aspiring to as well, because, women can provide a much softer way of dealing with things at times. It's not about brawn all the time. It's about how well you can service the public. Police women are doing really well in neighbourhood policing teams. They're doing really well in support group teams when they're dealing with riot-type situations.
Yeah, but we've got to be realistic, Julie. I mean, we're not just supporters of women in jobs. I'm sure many of us listening are, though. We're also members of the public. I don't want to be mugged, and I don't want to be burgled, and I don't want a police officer who knocks off at 5 o'clock, quite frankly. I mean, it's not practical, is it?
It's not practical, no, and I don't think you will find any police officer who just knocks off at 5 o'clock. You will find that all police officers have to work a set shift pattern. That will mean that there is always someone on.
But you know what I mean? By its very nature, if you're going to be in the police force, you have to be utterly flexible and dedicated.
You have to be utterly flexible and dedicated, and police women who work part-time are utterly flexible and dedicated, and you will find that a lot of them will actually say, I'm quite prepared to work flexibly and part-time and will work for you Friday evenings because my partner isn't a police officer and can look after the children at those times. So this is not about saying that all part-time and flexible workers just work Monday to Friday 9 to 5. Police women do work as flexibly and part-time through what you would term unsocial hours.
Yeah, Jan, I mean, Tom Windsor reckons he can save an incredible amount of money, £500 million, he says, by adjusting overtime and also sorting out these ratcheted pay rises that are basically time-based and length of service-based, not based on skills. I know there's a pay freeze at the moment, but that will shock many people that, in fact, police officers just get an annual pay rise.
Well, I mean, police officers have to be able to demonstrate that they're doing the job properly as well. I don't think Julie would say anything different. And where police officers are not performing well, then that should be managed and they should be brought up to the required standard. And there are, well-written policies to deal with people who are underperforming, and those need to be managed. Policing needs to also face its share of the cuts in the difficulty with money we have in this country.
Well,
at the moment.
how could the police service save money then, Jan?
Well, there's a variety of ways. I mean, it's wasting an awful lot of money in bureaucracy still. I did my report a year ago, and I would like to think that some of the improvements I suggested are actually in force now. They're still waiting. I think the cuts which forces are facing, they could be saving at least a third of their money by removing the unnecessary duplication of work, removing the handover between one officer and another officer and another officer. There's a whole host of different ways in which the police service can save money and should be saving money without removing feet from the street.
Julie, the Home Office has given us a statement. They say, we are determined to promote equality in policing, and while the number of female officers in the force has increased, we do need to do better. But this cannot be achieved by the same old box-ticking approaches. It requires a cultural change where the right values are embedded in the force's leadership. What does that mean?
I would absolutely agree with the Home Office in terms of there are some cultural changes that are needed within the police service, but right now we have a situation where, because numbers are being cut, England and Wales are losing 16,000 officers over the next couple of years. This means that managers are having to actually dictate more working practices, and the service is becoming less flexible because of that. We are trying to fit everybody into boxes of rigid shift patterns, and the problem will be that instead of being more flexible and encouraging women to join the service, women will actually not join, and in fact we will lose women from the service because of the working practices that are being suggested at the moment.
Well, we'll see what happens. We'll certainly keep an eye on it. Thank you very much. That's Julie Nesbit, and you also heard there from Jan Berry. Thank you very much to you both. Thank you.